Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. She likes the golden Oreos, which, as you all know, is not really an Oreo, but fine. We're also here with Candelaria Thompson.
Who doesn't like Oreos?
Who doesn't like Oreos
Period.
at all?
At all.
And Ken Williams, he just eats ginger snaps. That's it. He
This
sneaked a
ginger
ginger
snap
snap in here
day
last
is-
week, and he
Hold
asked me if I
on. When
want
is
one.
Ginger Snap Day?
You noticed
There's a
that?
day,
He-
National Ginger Snap
He
Day. I
like
could bring
the-
you
he
some
like
ginger
those ginger,
snaps.
the long ones.
No, he had the snaps the other day.
He
He
did.
had the round ones.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the
I like
yeah.
I like those
There's
ones.
other
and
ones,
but I
there
don't
was
like
not
the
a
gingerbread
single, and
ones.
I, you know, there was not a
you-
single offer like, Fields, you want a snap?
Because you probably had a bunch of snacks you were
I had no
snacking on
snacks in
anyway.
here. I watched the
I feel
snaps
sorry
being
for you.
diminished one by one. Not a snap.
That is, I rarely see Kendrick eating.
That's
I would
true.
leave him alone to eat that by himself.
One snap?
One
Out of
snap.
20
That's
snaps?
all he asked for. One.
No, I asked for
Oh,
that.
that's the beat.
I said, I wonder if any man get half off for me.
So why you gonna ask?
No, because I don't got a way.
Oh,
I figured
I would
he-
just say,
I
can't give you.
figured-
I get off one of your.
No, don't try to bring no
snap.
snap there now. Okay? I'm in the middle of Oreos now. I can't. Are you picking up the phone?
I see it for you.
I know. Oh, shit. Well, I know he was going to offer me no
Why?
snap.
He going?
He going on the phone. He's
He
like,
got on the phone. Maybe he went to order some snaps.
He,
Anyway,
Oh.
so how are things in your world? I mean, listen, we have to say right away our thoughts. I don't know if you know that's valid anymore. Anyway, certainly, you know, we express our concern about this incident
In Exuma.
in Exuma. Crazy stuff.
yeah.
We cannot speculate.
Mm-hmm.
So we move over to the other side and just hope that, you know, the right things are done in this industry to, you know, regulate, enforce the regulations, make sure these boats are up to par. Because I mean, I've been around for a while. I've not heard of a boat blowing up. You know, it's not like, you know, I mean, it's
Neither
just,
have I.
you know, I mean, there have been accidents in boats, but not just spontaneous combustion, you know.
No. I hope the proper
so you wonder why.
investigation is done to figure out what's going on. And I just, I get to the point, Edward, where I just get so
Tired?
tired of the reaction. You know what I mean? Like, I just wonder when are we gonna be
do
proactive?
something, right.
Proactive.
I had a conversation with
Just
someone, right,
tired of it.
today, who shall remain nameless. And I said, you know, and I'm just taking it. I said, you know, let me give you an example. Paradise Island, if you just from a number, what would you say, percentage-wise, activity as we speak, in terms of tourism activity, is happening on Paradise Island, say in the general pool? A
Tourism
percentage.
activity?
Yeah, let's say the pool is 100% in terms of tourist activity in
I'd
New
say
Providence.
98%.
No, I
No,
mean, I
not
know it's
that
probably
high.
not much, but let's say it's 70%, 60%.
I think 98%.
It's high.
It's high. It's the
98%.
majority of.
If you're talking about Paradise Island exclusively,
Paradise
I say 98%.
Okay, so no, I mean, because you got Cable Beach, you got downtown, you got you got a lot of things
Got
going on, right? You got
West.
little excursions and what have you, but a good portion, a goodly, what we call it in the bomb is a goodly portion, right? Let me tell you something, man. There's no thing going on. Okay, you got. Let me just say this now. You got people who should not be on that island. Okay.
What island?
Paradise Island, or near any touristic scenario.
No,
Look, your boy going
near-
low. You bring your
I don't blame you,
I
Kendra.
would
because
you
you
get-
know
hold
what?
on, hold
Because
on.
you know
Why
what?
would you
No,
get
did
it?
you call?
No,
hold
baby, you're
on,
good.
hold on, hold
I
on.
got it, I
Did you
got it.
call? Did you
A
call someone for
locker
this?
snack?
Did you just make a call for that?
Yeah.
What is there a
man.
shop in here?
Yeah, because
Where
you know
did
what?
you go
I'm
for
not
them?
talking
You
to
two
you, Rogan
stink, that's
Smith.
why.
I'm not talking to
Kendrick,
you.
you
You're
have
out of
a
this
sachet.
conversation. What is with you? Where did you get this
But
from?
thank you.
He made
I
it
don't-
By the way, I
all.
appreciate
I don't
it.
eat chips.
And what I'm saying is there a shop in here? Is
Where
there
did
some
you
kind of
get-
shop?
No,
You
I
don't
don't.
just you don't just go and get a
They all
plethora.
look great. No, I'm
This
good.
is. I told you this is one of the worst cookies on the planet. This
Chocolate.
and what was
Let me
that one I
explain
called
something
you?
to you.
Creams.
Of all these years
I like
that
the
we've been coming
coconut
in here,
creams.
you have a
Coconut.
source of snacks this close, and we don't know about the source of snacks.
Thank you,
Does
Kendrick.
that say ginger nuts?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
snaps.
yeah. Anyway,
Like
It ain't the
ginger
snaps.
Yeah.
It says I'm reading the label. That's
yeah,
all
but
that I'm
you
doing.
are, and you're reading it because you're slack. Now,
I'm not.
what are you looking? What are you?
Just having
Why
a
your
little
eyes
bit
right
of
up?
fun
But no,
on
going back to this
Monday.
thing about the Paradise Island or
Yeah.
anywhere, right? do we? I think we must appreciate, Rogan Smith. You're talking about tide of reaction, right? About the sensitivity of what that there should be sensitivity to what drives this economy, not just PI, just tourism in general, right? You'd think that all of the possible measures to protect that industry would be in place, right? So how is it that you can have someone with an anklet bracelet anywhere near these people?
You feel me? And you've
So
seen
when
that. You've
something-
seen that, and you've seen that.
Listen, when you see, here's the situation. Let's get real. When you have a situation, so there are mechanisms to control these things. You know, we're talking about this incident with the boat, for instance, right? This is all about enforcement, you know.
That's all
People
it
will
is.
do whatever they can get away with.
Yeah.
Okay?
Some
When the
people-
Wild Wild West was existing,
This is the Wild Wild
when
West.
you had the Wild Wild West,
This is
Two
the
Gun
Wild
Kid and
Wild
all them
West.
come out until the marshal come.
This is the Wild Wild West. Ain't no laws without
If the
laws
marshal
here.
come, things calm down, right? But we don't got no marshal.
No.
We get reaction after the fact.
Okay. So what's that? Who's that? That's Tina. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, I believe it's Tina who got the shop. Yeah, that's what happened.
How
Yeah,
why you
and she
calling,
did-
why
and she-
you calling
Why
her
you
name?
calling her out
How you
like
She don't
that,
mind. She
though?
just went like that. She don't mind having a shop.
No,
The shop is
she's
open,
hailing you.
obviously.
She's hailing you.
No, when I say I got the shop, she went like that.
She can't hear you in there.
She can.
You in bed?
Yes.
So now we have
$20.
to- No, boo-boo.
Can you hear me,
No,
Tony?
boo-boo.
Yes, she
No,
said she can.
yeah,
Yes, she
okay,
can.
okay.
We're in bed,
$20
though.
for you,
We're in
yes.
bed. No,
Yeah.
we're in bed. We're in bed. He's trying to take the $20 back what he owed me.
I tried to take it back.
And I owe my money on the first
You
break.
said you want bet.
No, I said, yeah, but we didn't set the bet.
I did. I said $20.
No, boss, I didn't agree to that.
No, boss.
I didn't agree
I
to
got
that.
it like a plantation
and I won
thing
my
now.
$20 on the
Okay.
first break.
Oh my goodness.
We're talking about a very serious thing here, you know.
Okay, let's go
All
back.
right.
You
All
owe me
right.
$20, but okay.
So having said that, okay, no, we have to listen, people, listen, I think we may be headed in a time where people realize how serious we need to get. You know, like this VAT thing and the budgeting. People are starting to understand what's going down and what needs to happen. But this now is another element
This is
of what
different
needs
too,
to
yeah.
happen
Happen too,
in
yeah.
this country. We cannot any longer pander. You see, this whole thing,
These are people's lives.
we cannot speak to this incident because it's an ongoing investigation, right? But, you know, I am sick and tired of hearing one or two people talk about bread out of my mouth simply because they want to do what they want to do to the detriment of everyone else.
Right.
They can say whatever they want, you know. It's up to the people to not who are
Accept
it.
accepting it and listening to it. So you have to reject that.
I reject it. You have green spaces where people have decided, oh, this way I can set up my car dealership.
Yeah.
But
The,
anyway, I
the
will
signs
stay
say
on message.
no parking, tow away, but they parking right under the sign.
Hmm.
But let me tell you something.
So something's gotta give.
This is so unfortunate. This is so unfortunate for someone to have lost their life,
Very sad.
and for this woman, this 22-year-old girl, to have both her legs amputated. I mean, you think about that for a second. I'm sure most of us have been to Exuma or gone on a boat ride. You can
Yeah.
imagine you went on a boat ride and that's your last boat ride, and not for anything that you've done. Or you one day you on the beach walking happily and then the next minute both your legs are gone. And by the way, I congratulate the folks who were heroes in that moment and went to try and assist other folks after this explosion, because that was, I mean, if you saw the footage, I mean, very few people would have said, let me swim over there and help somebody
Right.
else. They would have been like, let me get the heck up out of this area.
And you
Yeah.
know what's interesting? I don't know if you saw the video of the people, and we got to run, who were in the other boat.
Yes.
Like, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
They weren't checking for trying to deal with that.
No,
The people
I
who I
understood.
assume
I understood.
they're concerned, but the
concern, though,
reality is
'cause
the
it looked like
people
it
who
was
were
gonna
driving
blow.
the boat
Yeah.
had gone to rescue
People
those
went
other
to
people.
rescue. Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with Rogan Smith, Candelaria
I
Thompson.
thought I said I want my money on that first break.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well,
on the next
what you
break.
want and what you can get is two different things.
I'll just come over
And
there
and
take
you
my
get to
money.
you got to stick out of two. That's number one. So that's $10
Come over
off.
there and take
It's
my-
hard
So
to
that's
give money to people who
once you
have
get
big
once you
attitude.
get stick attitude, that's immediately 50% discount.
Okay, note to self, tire will be burst after.
Okay,
show.
oh, fine, fine.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
you know
did I say it out
what?
loud?
And then note to
Put 'em-
self, put us in jail. Note to self.
Then I just make a call. Like Kendrick was just
No, you
talking
ain't gonna
about
make no
on the
call.
break. Hey,
No, I have
Kendrick?
some better calls than you.
No, you ain't got no better calls.
I got
than
some
me.
better calls than you, buddy.
That'll go missing.
All right. So anyway, no, we were talking about, no, it is a culture of permissiveness and if there is one thing that we can do going forward in this country is a simple L and O, law and order.
Mm-hmm.
And on everything, listen, murder, rape, those things are the extreme. And obviously you investigate those and you deal with this. But running through traffic lights, littering, people just stopping in the road.
That is my pet
Just
peeve.
stopping in the road to talk.
Absolutely. Like, why can't you? Oh, I almost let something slip. That irks me. You have no idea.
And you know what just killed me?
And they get mad
park,
at you
right?
when you blow to them.
But you know what kills me is they stop, and then after you signal to them like, hey, then they just pull over. Like, why didn't you just pull
Do that
over?
in the first place. Or they get mad.
Or they get mad.
When I used to do the morning show, we were much more radical, and I think I'm going to have to reintroduce some of those things. I think we need to introduce the disintegrator gun again. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask Rogan Smith. Rogan Smith, if you had a disintegrator gun, like in your car.
I pointed right at you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but if you had a
that's number
disintegrator
one.
gun, and if someone in front of you stopped in the middle of the road
To have a conversation?
to have a conversation, would you, A, use the disintegrator gun, or B, not use the disintegrator gun?
I'll take A.
A.
I'll take A.
Disintegrator gun. And you see, I think what we do, because we don't want to harm anyone, it'll be a
I do.
neutron disintegrator gun. They'll just find themselves sitting on the ground. Car gone.
I want them gone.
No. You just did something on the radio. You can't espouse murder.
I want them gone.
They're sitting there talking to the gal, like they pimping. Next thing they know, they're on the ground. Car gone.
Turn it into pumpkin.
Just
cassava.
dust, man. Just dust, and then you just walk past them.
People are so oblivious and inconsiderate, and
the disintegrator gun would be programmed such that it would know that this person is acting out of order. So you can't just do it to someone like she can't just do it to me because she don't like me,
right?
Because that's what she want to do anyway. Okay?
No.
No, but you know what I'm saying. It really, those of us who try.
That is my pet
We're not
peeve,
perfect.
though.
Who try to act in an orderly
Decently.
way. We try. We make mistakes, and then we apologize when someone calls us on it. We don't go like, F.
Mm-hmm.
We realize we did something wrong. These brothers, the other day, listen to this. I had to change my tires. Speaking of slashing tires, so I waited patiently for someone to reverse out and to take their space.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was waiting, the guy said to me, well, you need to turn around, the tire purveyor, you need to turn around so you can reverse in because of how the tire is positioned. So as I did that, he just pulled in. So now it's by the way, Ken, why are you laughing, man? It's 10 o'clock in the morning, right? So your boys step out.
This mana. What's that in his hand?
Collect. You got a beer.
10 o'clock in the morning?
10 o'clock. I said, excuse me, sir.
That's his coffee again.
And this is where I made myself.
You will be decent.
A problem. Decent. I said, excuse me, sir. I was waiting to pull in that spot. Waiting to pull in what spot? What kind of saw? I look like any saw to you?
He said, what kind of sauce?
Like, what kind of saw? Because I said, excuse me, sir.
And he don't know what sir is?
No, he knows what it sir is, but that's his...
Oh my God.
Like, what kind of saw? Who you think you calling saw? What kind of... how you mean you pull it in the spot? I ain't that spot, but...
Did I see that you?
And then...
But do you see how things get violent very quickly?
And then, not only that, right? Now, this is the uncomfortable piece. So I have to pull into another spot. He is pulled out. He has his beer at 10 o'clock. He's sitting down, and then I go and I sit down in the bench
next to him?
Virtually 6 feet from him. But we didn't have any discussion.
But do you see how an incident like that could get violent, or why it gets violent? Because it's about the principle of it all.
Two,
it's
I
about
don't know, sirs together. That'd have been a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you had someone who was just like him coming out with his collect,
yeah,
then that you know tire was getting changed.
It would have been collect. collect.
Exactly.
Okay, so
You
yeah,
feel
no.
me?
But because I had to, because you see, and this is where civility
On
is
your part.
overridden by incivility. I had to back down. I had
But you know- but you know-
have the awareness and the emotional intelligence to do that,
to not get shot.
right? No, they
But you
just
know
wing it.
something? The tire place could have played a role too in saying, I'm not serving you because that gentleman was reversing into the spot. No, they could have.
Yeah.
They
well,
could have.
I won't say the tire place, but the tire place dude who was fixing my hair, he had one of them bugs.
Oh Lord.
So
Where look at
I-
your hand coming out there.
the little piece,
Just
the
one-
little couple fingerlings.
So he wasn't
like
relating.
it looked like a mutation.
Did he say fake links?
It looked like little fingerlings.
Ah,
Oh
So
my God.
okay.
What is that supposed to mean?
No, like it looks like little fingers, like
You
how
know
you have
just
little
what he
fingers.
mean.
You know how you have little fingers growing off your mole or whatever. So the reality is, he had a little thing.
so he
It
ain't
looked
on
like
your
little, it
run.
looked like a little squid.
So he couldn't help you. That's what you
On
So
your
said.
he,
He can't help
He
you.
ain't the one to come and try to be
Hey.
civil.
because probably if I'd said something to him, or if I'd said, the guy say they would probably communicate with each other. Yeah, but he's a sissy, like that. What's up? So I just sat down.
Are we not judging a book by its cover?
Yes.
So
This man
bad.
with the fingerling may,
I-
may have
just-
said, "Sir, can you
I'm
please
just
remove? I'm not going to serve you until this man."
I already had a brief discussion with
Come
him,
here.
and he was not going to say, "Please, sir, can you know?" It wasn't going to happen that way.
Oh Jesus!
You see, go get the plug out there. That's what he told me.
The man say, "What do you say? What's sir?
What kind of who you calling sir?
So, who you calling sir?"
Who you calling?
Well, mother
Like
takes
as if
sick.
that
Like
was
he,
an insult.
like he said the
And
N
you know,
word or something.
he didn't even think. It wasn't like I said.
Or big man.
I said, sir,
Boss.
sir, I was pulling
That's
into
when you
that
don't
spot.
have nothing to say.
So he could have just very easily, because he was still in his car, he could have said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I said, I might even said, "Don't worry about it. I'll just pull
Yeah,
around here."
but because of his
No, but
reaction,
no, boy.
Oh, that's when you have
Who
nothing
you
to
think
say.
you is?
See, you didn't say bye, you didn't say the N word, you didn't say, you know what I
Wow.
mean? Like, that was the only thing he could come
who
back
you
with.
calling
Who you
sir?
calling sir?
That is the part I
In other
cannot
words,
get.
I can't even respect him.
Mother takes sir.
What you
Listen,
let me write that down.
Incivility. I used to play basketball, as you know,
What you
many
think
years
this
ago,
is?
out by Delaport, right? So I'm playing Delaport. I'm used to playing basketball in a different environment where if you fouled someone, you would call foul. So if you and I play in Canada and I hit you, I'd say, I'll call foul and give you the ball. So I'm playing out there by Delaport, and I fouled someone. So I said, foul. What kind of foul? You calling foul on, boy? I said, no, I'm sorry, sir. I'm calling foul on myself to give you the ball. So when he then started to process that,
he was saying he fouled you.
right. So when he started to process that, because he couldn't lose, he can't lose the argument. He goes, hey, look here, boy. I call my own foul, yeah.
Oh my God.
I said, okay, give me the ball then. it's just,
Oh my gosh.
I call my own foul, boy. You think you is?
Oh my God.
And it's just like that, them abrupt little statements. Yeah, man, so we have to, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to have hope. There's always hope. In the same way, and I'm very proud of the Bahamian people. In the same way that they've begun to analyze and to think about, and not accept generally, but just think about the reasoning behind the VAT increase and why. They've listened to reason. They're going to watch. They're going to make sure. I think they're going to hold the government accountable. We need to now apply that same kind of thought process and discipline to being an orderly society. And if we do, things will change dramatically. We can no longer be cowering and tolerant of behaviors that force us to say, I don't want to go to this place or I don't want to go to that place because you're afraid about how people are going to act. And so I don't know how we do it, Roganne Smith, but it has to happen.
Boy, it really affects the whole industry. It really affects the whole industry because and even the tourism industry, one incident in one area really can have an effect on somebody else. You know what I mean?
And I'll tell you what's sad, and this is the test. I've been around for 60 years. I don't recall any situation like this happening. I'm not saying it didn't, but I don't recall anything. This seems to be a very big deal. The question is, will it be allowed to happen again? You see, once
It will.
is one thing, but now what do you say again when it happens again because
You
the
repeat-
things
you-
that have not
you
been
repeat
done?
The previous statement.
What's that?
you repeat the previous statement. I know I sound very negative.
And this ain't like
but
gun
that is-
control,
but that
right?
is-
This is something
that-
you can
that-
control.
That is
Well,
just,
that ought to be controlled.
Yeah,
this is a lawless society.
yeah.
It's
Who
just
you
very
can pay off.
lawless.
So like,
You know, let me ask you, because
As
Ken
in
brought this up
slack.
about
Slack.
how you could
Slackness.
call someone and all that, right?
Yes.
This gives rise once again to, and let's just talk about it for a couple of minutes, for bringing in some people to do certain jobs that are not quote unquote of us. You know, this is what used to happen back in the 60s. I mean, that's how my father got here from Trinidad, the police force, etc., but that's for different reasons. But do you think, Rogan, that it requires people who are from outside to come in, be given a mandate in terms of inspections on certain things, traffic tick, whatever?
Yes, I do.
So that enable. I don't know. See, because you go to states, I don't know you. I don't know you.
Well, I was
Right,
about to bring that
'cause it's so
same.
many- it's-
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, because I don't know you. I really don't. I'm only here to enforce the law. I'm here to do my job, and that is that.
And you can't
There's
know
no
what you call me.
familiarity.
I know cousin.
And I'm not changing anything. Yeah, because you're not related.
No.
Bahamians, that's an expectation. Like, I know you can't work it out for me. You know, as opposed to,
Maybe
I know
this is
you,
the
let me come
argument.
this way, let me help you out, or, so it's almost like it's an expectation.
Maybe that's
Like,
what.
oh,
Maybe
man,
that's
You
straight,
what.
give me this
straight.
ticket. You give me the
Yeah.
ticket, but my cousin can get rid of this at work.
Yeah, man.
I'm
We
at the
can handle
police.
that.
Well, maybe you know what? Maybe just maybe there are things like for restaurant and food and health inspections.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, inspections on things like motor vehicles, vessel. You know, like these tourist related scenario. You know, things that can put people at in harm's way. Maybe we need to start at that very basic level, creating a force of people who are not of us. We have to recognize this is what we do. Okay? This is what we do. If someone gives you a ticket, you pick up the phone to see who you could call.
I mean,
Yep.
is there not great? Well, I mean, yes, right?
Uh-huh.
I think that's a nice idea, right? But can we not have? Do you think it's not possible for us to have Bahamians who are upstanding individuals, who, regardless of the fact that I know you, Edward Fields, I don't care. You broke the law, and that's what it is.
You know,
Are there not checks and balances in place where even if I Rogan go and put in the system
That's
that you
stay
have
few and far
that
between.
you have run a red light or whatever, I'm giving you a
Unfortunately.
ticket, that if somebody goes in there and removes that from the system, you can see who removed it, and then you can
I
query
mean, yeah,
why they
obviously
can't
there
be
can be
removed.
places in place, but
Why
I
can't
just
we
finished
do
talking
that?
to a particular guy, a minister,
There have to be
about
systems.
why
You
we
can't
don't have this,
rely
and he
on
said,
the
"Well, you ain't paying money."
individual.
See, listen.
That's the problem.
I feel that there's probably a lot of pressure on people in those positions as well. That yes, I give Candy the ticket, and then Candy pressure me, or by the way, or
Right.
Candy go beyond me.
Right.
She go to Ken. Call Ken. Ken, listen, I know you're over there, and he's doing it. You can take it up with me. And then he feels pressure.
Yeah.
And we just live in such a small society. The feeling of pressure that you shouldn't have put on
Put
him.
on. Right. You shouldn't even have done it.
Okay, so maybe we need to relieve that, Rogan Smith. Maybe we need to think about, listen, until we can get it together, until we as a culture realize, you know how you don't pay the fine? You know how you don't pay the fine?
Don't
go through the light.
Right.
You ain't got to go through the light. You know how you avoid the ticket for being obstruction of traffic by pulling in the middle of the road? Just don't pull in the middle of the road. Okay, and until someone holds you responsible for that, then, I don't know. It has to happen. It has to happen at almost every single level.
To me,
It's in private sector. It's in public sector.
We need to
it's
enforce
everywhere.
the law across the board every time, or don't enforce it at all. Just have a laissez-faire society.
I
Do what you want
hope,
to.
like you say, that there is a cadre of Bahamians who will, you put them, I know people, for instance, who are in various departments, right, who they write up the tickets, or they write up the things, and then they get tired of doing it. You know why? It doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because their
Somebody
work, someone
else
else
above them
yeah,
is
yeah,
making
yeah.
a call.
Yeah, we got to have a serious come to Jesus something about how serious we are
Did you
in
say
terms.
Jesus?
Yeah, I said it. It's a phrase. We can say phrases.
Well, who are you coming to?
Well, I don't know. I'm not the one coming. Okay, so we need to have a serious moment. You slack again. And I sort of laugh. I sort of laugh. And like, don't worry. I can see from here. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know. You don't know. Drink your water. So anyway, so and they think they sly with it. You see? No, of course not. Ken know, I know, and Candy know.
You sound like a psycho.
I know. Yeah, but you know. I can tell you off the air, you can say you know. We'll be right back. We got the news. Then we'll be back with Candy. Our guest this afternoon is Tommy Turnquist, who's the chairman of Bahamas Air. We'll be right back. Okay, Bernice. All right. Yeah.
Take it straight.
Yeah.
Y'all like take it straight to the
Yeah.
fire. I swear. Y'all just make me
She's
nervous.
a big fan of Bernice. We're
Y'all
here
make
with
me
Ken
nervous.
Williams, with Rogan Smith, with
Ed
Candelaire
Fields.
Thompson,
Candelaire.
and
With
who?
Chandelier.
Candelaire.
And Candy. What's going on?
I'm good.
Okay. You see a little shuffle.
I don't like how you called me Candelaire. But
I didn't say Candelaria.
Yeah, you did.
I thought I said Ria.
Uh-uh.
All right, let me add the Ria on there.
Yeah, just
Okay.
redo that for me.
Ia.
Candy is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I have the.
So you don't like Candelaire?
Candelaria.
Okay, you don't want to go to Leia.
No.
Okay.
Because I have childhood memories of people
People
calling
call
me
you
Chandelier.
I know a woman named Chandelier.
You ain't know that song?
I know the song. Love the song.
Okay.
Love the song, but I
Yeah.
don't like it from my name.
I think I'm.
You know what? I had
How
somebody.
about Shandy?
No, I know her Shandy.
Her name is Candy.
But listen, I had a name tag on when I was, working over at Atlantis. And I literally, the lady, she zoomed in on my name tag with her finger.
It was a zoom?
Zoomed, like
Okay.
right above my,
Yeah.
my
Chest bone.
chest bone. She took a finger and read my name and still came out with Cinderella. Like that.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Because you had a glass of
Say
fun.
Cinderella? I looked at her and I looked down
Yeah,
at my name.
see, these are the people who shouldn't be.
What?
This is a Bahamian, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, see, this is the person who should not obviously have a driver's license.
Cinderella.
I said, I mean, she should have, I couldn't
that's
even
in your
talk
name,
after
right?
that. I couldn't even talk.
We were talking off the air just to, you see like how that was. How
yeah.
do people, how are they on the road and have to read? They have to take a written, they have to read
Ken.
Yeah, exactly.
book.
That's a prime example.
and have a comprehensive exam on the book to pass the test to get a license.
Prime example. You can't do it.
Cinderella.
I mean,
Your
You know
name
what?
is so, and Candelaria was on it.
Candelaria
But
was on
even
it.
though C-I,
And you know how you point at the word to see, to
she
sound
sounded
it out?
Yeah.
I
So
came up
but
with
she
Cinderella.
didn't get to can. She didn't get to can. She didn't get to can.
Right.
Yeah, she
Cinderella.
decided from the beginning this is sin.
You should have said yes, Cinderella.
You know, what
I
was her
couldn't say
name?
anything.
You should have said
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
Boyton.
No, I couldn't. I literally could not say anything.
What's our
She
topic?
saw, well, I don't really have a topic, so, I mean, I do have a topic.
Oh, geez.
No, well, anyway, so, no, all little jokes aside.
Yeah.
So, my week last week ended very somberly. I had a recent death in the family. My husband's father passed away.
Oh.
So, for those who
Is
know,
that Sweet Richard?
Sweet Tea.
Sweet
So
Tea.
those who know Dexter Thompson, also known as Sweet Tea, he was a performer.
Right.
He passed away
The
last
Cutlass,
week.
right?
What's that?
No,
The fa-
no,
No,
that's
he
not
did.
like limbo.
Yeah, like he was.
yeah.
He pretty much,
Yeah.
kind of would have emulated what Sweet Richard would have done.
Right.
Which
Right.
who was, it was his dad. You remember Kitty, who he used to perform with, Sweet Richard.
I wasn't
and all
around
that.
that time.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
he was
Yeah,
a
but I know he
Bahamian
did, yeah.
cultural icon.
uh-huh.
But I brought that up to say, death just, I guess because I was, going through it and supporting my husband through.
Condolences to Duran, by the way.
I thank you. Supporting him through, this very trying time. They had a very, kind of tumultuous, complex relationship.
all
My
have, yeah.
father-in-law was a complex man, but if for those who really who knew him, I mean, he was a very friendly guy, had a very big heart, and affected a lot of people, influenced a lot of people. But it was interesting to see from my perspective and my husband and his relationship, and just how this past year it was, they became very close, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have much of a relationship prior to. I mean, they would talk and he would check in and things like that. But it just so happened that this past year, they were able to kind of mend certain things, and he got closer, and I was so happy for that for my husband, because
You don't
if
want
it
that
hadn't,
outstanding.
if he hadn't, the grief, I think, would have been way too much. Grief, when it's guilt grief, is like I feel like it hits a person more when you feel guilty about not being able to,
Closure. Bring
right,
closure to things.
or just to closure.
He wanted to get closer to his father.
Man, I think ultimately, I think most people, who have some sort of, broken, and then this is where my topic was going, like for people who have like those maybe, broken relationships, especially with their, like their parent or a sibling, like somebody very close, like their immediate family. I think it's a killer if you don't kind of do something about it before something happens, and then you have absolutely have no way of repairing it or doing something about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it all depends on the person. But I know for my husband, and I'm so happy for him that he is in that space that he could say he's sad. Obviously, he's
They're
very
reconciled.
sad, but
They're reconciled.
he feels now. Yeah, he's happy that he was able to get that chance.
I had that situation with my mother. My mother was sick for many, many years. But, I know I spent the last day especially with my mother. But for years up leading to that, I made sure that there were just things I did. But
right.
But the thing is, and we were always close, but you don't want to have someone pass.
Right.
Where you didn't, if you despise someone, it doesn't matter, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't. But if it's only just something that's tension, you want to try to bring closure to that.
Was it just tension?
That's why I said, especially with a parent, because I think, that's a whole different dynamic in relationship in itself. Would you say?
No. Was there tension between them? Would you call it tension?
I wouldn't call it tension. It was just, without going, into all the details of their, relationship, but
Unresolved issues.
It was a lot, I mean, he wasn't, a part of his life for
like that
for the majority of his adult.
I remember
life.
you when I had that conversation. This was last year, I believe, and I was surprised because I didn't know that was the case with your husband and his father.
Yeah. Because
I said too, with me and my father, I didn't grow up with my daddy.
Right.
And for years I tried to have a relationship with him, but my father is very cold.
Yeah.
And I see some of that in me at times, right? But he can be very cold. And so for years and years and years and years and years and years, I wanted that relationship. And then it just came to a point where I was like, man, screw it. Yeah. I'm not going to be the only one reaching out and trying to have that relationship with you.
He went through that too.
I ain't going to do it.
He went through that too.
And it's so odd that you're even bringing this up, because my husband and I were having a conversation the other night, and he said, Brogan, you need to let that go, because if something happens to your father. And I was like, I don't want him to die, but it's it's gonna happen someday. But I don't know that I would have a horrible reaction to it.
Let me tell you, and I will say this. So now my husband, he had the same, he's trying to reach out and sometimes the connection never would work, or he would just force it maybe too much, or the father would force it too much, but it became, he had to let it go. And when he let it go, he was just, I think the pressure and the expectations that he put on himself and he put on his father kind of melted away. And it allowed, like some barriers to come down where, I'm just going to, it is what it is. And I'm going to do what I can while he is alive. And we had a conversation literally prior to him passing away. And and I asked him, there was several of us, and I said, what would you do? I mean, if, he passed away, and he's like, and he said it, he would be okay in the sense that because he would be sad, but he was been happy that he had this time with him and so forth. But let me tell you, when that happened, and it happened suddenly and very unexpectedly, that hit him like a ton of bricks. And I know you people say, I know, but I know people say that, oh, it's not going to bother me, or it's not going to do anything to me. But I guess there's always that in your mind that they're there. They're there.
Weird, but it's
they're
just
alive.
weird. But it's just weird. I mean, I imagine, I'm just throwing this in every situation. I know I'm sounding cliche because I said it all the time. Every situation is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of situations like what you're talking about, but there are situations, for instance, where people had an abusive father.
Oh yeah.
And they don't care about what
There's a sense of relief when they pass away.
Okay.
Yeah.
So situation, but that is a very real scenario when there isn't. There's a yearning maybe on both sides, and it doesn't come to closure. That's a problem.
Yeah,
There's some situations that don't.
In my case, there ain't no yearning on both sides. Yeah. It was only a yearning on my side.
Right.
So that had to go out the window.
And in fact, to be honest with you, what will happen in your case, Rogan, I assume, is he is going to have a problem.
What do you mean?
In other words, when he's near the end,
he's
going to have a lot of issues to deal with
and
regrets. Well, you never know.
I don't think you will have one regret.
You don't know. I'm just saying you don't know.
And
but the point is that isn't on you.
It works on both sides too. It's not just
the
person. Yeah, it works on both sides. Like the guilt might be on him.
Yeah.
You probably released it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
I released it.
So listen, boy, the human dynamic. Some serious stuff. Yeah. It's you look at what's going on. I don't want to talk about this guy up the north, but you look at how, I don't know what we are on this earth, but you look at some of the scenarios that are going on, right? Where someone can leave from their country 3,060, how much ever 1,000 miles away, trek through Central America, get to the U.S. because they feel that they're having to escape from a horrendous situation of gang warfare and the child could be raped or the kid could be put. Then they get to the U.S. and then all of a sudden someone takes their 3-year-old child or their 4-year-old child from them. Mm-hmm. The amount of human dynamics that are going on.
Yeah.
We all have, I think all of us sitting in this room anyway, and I don't want to speak for everyone, have to think how lucky we have it compared to so many other people in the world. But everything is different. Every situation is different. Everything has their own dynamic. And we have to cope. We have to find a way to cope, So again, condolences out to Duran. I mean, and I know Duran
think he's
too.
Listening. Hopefully.
And I know Duran very well. And I know Duran is a very. Let me see how I can put these two words together. sensitive, intense person.
Yes.
And I don't know, or maybe it even could be the other way around. Intense but sensitive person.
Yeah, no.
So I know that, things like this are very meaningful to him. And so, again, we're, you're a strong dude. So, but it is the way it is. Life, it comes, every day, boy.
But I guess my message for today was for, for a relationship like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about people who just, kind of right people, yes, you have abusive type of relationships but if there is, if you have a parent or even a sibling that, for whatever reason, you just things, if it's not broken all the way, try to mend it. Make an effort. And do what you can and then leave it there.
Listen, Candy, we got to go. Mm-hmm. Our guest this afternoon coming into the studio a couple of minutes is Tommy Turnquest, former Minister of National Security and now Chairman of the Bahamas Air. We'll be with him in a second. Thank you, Candy.
Thanks, Candy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith. And our guest this afternoon is Mr. Tommy Turnquest, former Minister of National Security, current Chairman of Bahamas Air. We don't just fly there, we live there.
Just fly there, we live here.
Just fly there, we live there. And let me just, in full disclosure, my brother-in-law. So, having said all of that stuff, welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. T, as we say.
Thank you.
I don't know why I always hear the little jingle. Remember from the election a couple of years ago? Every
Tommy
time I
T.
see
Me?
him, yes. Every time I see him, it was catchy.
We still have a mug if you want one of them.
What?
I smiled because I was back in 2001, 2002, and so that's now 16 years.
Yes.
So when I meet someone around 25, 26. They're enamored by me. The problem was in 2002 they couldn't vote.
But let me ask you a question.
Exactly.
How much of that mug you have left? You could give Rogan one of the mug.
We don't have any new ones left. I
You got a lot of mug, but you got a lot of paraphernalia left over. Oh, yeah.
From 2002.
No. I'm now fully retired. In 2012, sorry, after we lost, I took a 2-year sabbatical, and I wanted to determine whether, I enjoyed being out or if I wanted to try and get back in. Right. If it was the will of the people and so on. But I enjoyed those 2 years, and I'm now out.
So you don't miss frontline politics?
Not at all.
Really?
Not at all. In fact,
after all those years,
when the Prime Minister asked me to be the chairman of Bahamas Air, I'm a former leader of the FNM, and so I help whenever I can. I've been active in behind the scenes, but I have no ambition to really.
That's a shocker. You say escape.
I say escape. I used to say to him, there's only two ways to get out of politics. You die, you get beat.
No.
But he went back in.
I'm happy. I play tennis now 4 times a week.
Very good.
I have more time with my family, and in fact, 2 of my children are now married, and so they know that the pressure is now on them for the next stage.
They need a little grand action.
Well, that's what I'm looking forward to. But I promised them I wouldn't say that. So
I did. So you know what you got to say.
It's so funny to hear because a lot of times when people come in politics, they say it's addictive. So even if you come out, it's always that longing to go back in.
Well, people put a lot of pressure on you. Eh?
Well, I have no regrets. I got involved at an early age. I got back from school in 1981. In 1982, I got involved in the Torchbearers. I was president of Torchbearers for 4 or 5 years. I ran in 1987. So I ran in 6 elections.
Yeah.
That's a lot of elections.
That's a lot of elections.
Yeah.
I was elected 3 times, and then I served 5 years in the Senate. So I've been in Parliament for 20 years.
That is a long time.
A person can't ask for more than that. I've had an opportunity. It was really an honor for me to serve the Bahamian people in the posts in which I had. I did the best I can. I tried to keep out of the news because every time you say something, get social media say, "Man, you had your chance. Why you don't shut up?" and so on. So
you just melt off the scene.
Let me ask you a question that I've never asked you publicly, but I can ask you this question now. And I don't even know if I've ever asked you privately, to be honest with you. I know I did say to you, when you lost the leadership battle, that was your opportunity to get out. And, when you lost that election that night, that would have been a Wednesday night, I think. What made you, because I don't know how many people would have done it, what made you or what allowed you emotionally to go up on that stage, knowing what happened behind the scenes?
It's never been about me. I believe that I have something to offer. Unfortunately, people put lots of propaganda out on me about my parentage and whether I was qualified to serve the Bahamian people or not because of the circumstances in which I was born. I thought that was a whole crock of what. But and so I was able to wade through that. Anytime I had an opportunity to help someone, I made a point in trying to help them, regardless of who they were. And I believe that there are hundreds, some people may even say thousands of people that with no fanfare, just just by a stroke of the pen or paving a way somewhere, that I was able to help countless people. And I didn't ask for anything in return. The other day I was walking down Parliament Street in front of the Supreme Court, and someone driving a taxi said, "Man, you gave me my first job, boy. Thank you." And I didn't know who he was, no more than the man in the moon. But you just try to help people as best you can, and everybody has a season, and so I wasn't puffed up about it. My wife kept my feet on the ground. She said, "You ain't no minister in here today." and so when I was home, we created an oasis, and I was always comfortable doing what I did, and you do the best you can, because tomorrow someone else is going to have an opportunity. And so I say to my colleagues in the FNM who are now in positions of public trust and authority, that just do the best you can every single day, because
the day can come.
It will come. I mean,
unavoidable.
So try to help as many people as you can. The one thing I do say is, every time you make a decision, you will affect someone adversely. And so you have to make sure that you make your decisions for the greatest good. I'll give you an example. I was a minister of works when we changed the traffic on Bay and Shirley.
You got to bear on that. You got to bear on that. No, we can let him answer the question.
We already done that, but anyway.
You're getting that today. Go ahead.
And it was interesting because, taking like Sabre Drugs was right on the corner of Shirley Street. They used to say everyone on their way home used to stop there and buy their paper, buy some other stuff. Well, they sort of blame me for the traffic reversal for the decline, but the Tribune also changed from evening publication to morning publication. And so those people driving out east on their way home from town, there was no need to pick up the paper because they got the paper in the morning. Right. So you could put it down to any number of things. So people can complain. That
was the what do you call it? What's the name of the people who own that store? Jeez, it's right on top of my mind. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah. But let me ask you. So this is a very important question, sir. In what year? Well, first of all, I want to ask you the very simple question. Shirley Street was two-way up to which street in New Providence?
We're talking about Bay Street.
No, we're going to get to that. Excuse me.
Yeah, so in the first instance, I think it was up to Camp Road and
Fowler Street. Right, okay. Yeah. And then which direction was it going? It would have been going in which direction, sir?
So we reversed the direction, so, I mean, it's easy to...
It would have been going...
The other way.
Going east.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, which street...
And so that's what I said. So you talk about... That's why. So you're going... The people who live out east were going home, and... left-hand drive car driving on the left-hand side of the road, you pull right into Sabre Drug right there. That's how I remember it. You just remember these.
Do you recall where the road changed on Bay Street?
You already know what time it is because y'all done had this conversation.
Oh, for crying out loud. It's just what it is.
We did have the conversation.
At least you're an honest man. At least you're an honest man.
In fact, he called me from
I know
the radio.
But do you think he's lying? You think he's making it up?
No. At least he's honest enough to say y'all had the conversation.
But did it, well, let me read it. Did it change at Armstrong Street? Was it Armstrong Street?
Armstrong Street.
Or what street did you think it was?
I said to you, and I will maintain this to the day I die. I can't remember the year now. Right. I said my brother was alive at the time, and I said Bay Street was a two-way. I remember being on Bay Street when it was a two-way street. And I said my co-worker as well, when she listened to the show, said yes, she recalls when Bay Street was a two-way street.
Yeah. Up to Armstrong.
You know what really caused us to change it, and you can imagine it was a two-way street. You know where the Hilton is,
right?
Navy Lion Road, come around Navy Lion Road.
Yes.
The problem we had was that persons were trying to turn against the traffic to go west.
That's correct.
Right.
And so Cumberland Street came down, and they then had to turn to go west on.
That's correct.
That's on Bay Street. That's Marlborough.
On Marlborough Street.
But
Navy Line. Bay Street stopped
to
Navy Line, and then it went into Marlborough,
Right,
and then
right,
West
right.
Bay Street then started. Where it starts. Some people say it starts at Nassau Street. Some people say it starts at the Bend.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the personnel, the technical people at the Ministry of Works says, you know, we keep on having these traffic conflicts.
The traffic to cross over.
To cross over to do it, and it caused a traffic jam, and that really spurred it on.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing about it was, you know, these reports, it wasn't any earth-shattering reports that we had done. You know, reports had suggested that from the 70s that this ought to be done. It was just, you know.
Why do we take so you were in Ministry of Works.
Well,
you were in Ministry. Why do we take these long time to do simple things like a simple thing, a wave of a wand? I mean, how
I think Ed, if you're in government, you sort of appreciate the slow wheels of government. Just for the reason that I say, because every time you do something, someone's adversely impacted, and so it gives an opportunity that you can wake up tomorrow morning and say you can do something, and so it.
Well, I'll give you an example, just a quick example. You know the light on, because you would have been involved in this process too. The light at Potterski and Okra Hill.
Right.
Okay, so that light took place during the same time as the change around took place, because you came out of Potterski, right? So for 20 years, that light was there. About maybe, 6-7 years ago, that they tested it, they moved the light, and as a result, traffic flowed better. I just, I wonder, so that was one that adversely affected people for many years. But, like you say, the slow wheels of government.
If I had any advice to, Minister Bannister and his team at the Ministry of Works, I think they ought to, if they don't, they ought to drive around in the middle of the day and see these traffic lights and how they work. I go down Market Street every single day. That's the way I go home from town. And when those lights were installed X years ago, they all were synchronized.
Right.
With power cuts and all sorts of other things, they get out of synchronization. Look at the light at, say, Cordo and Market Street, for example. They give the east-west traffic far too much time instead of the north-south. It's things like that. The whole idea of government is to make the lives of citizens easier, the quality of life easier. There's no other reason to have a government. And so if the government's not making your life easier, there's really no need for a government.
Well, listen, we're here to talk about, one final question I'd ask you is, so you retired, or you're not retired. You got your little stuff going on. So, you know what I mean? You got big stuff going on, but it's not the daily pressure of...
I go to work every day.
Right, but it's not that daily pressure of having to deal with constituents. That's the one thing I don't know if people are prepared for when they go into politics, right?
Let me say how I deal with it. See, that's the one. People say, that must have been hard. It wasn't hard for me. But that's probably why I'm out of office.
Compartmentalization.
I believe that if I can't do something for you, I'm not going to tell you I could do it.
Yes.
Because while you have gratification today, possibly tomorrow, possibly next week,
you have to deal
at
with
some point you're coming back to me. And I knew I couldn't do it the first time.
Yeah.
So, why should I
stretch it out?
And so people say, boy, you're a big, what?
Right, yeah.
So, but I mean,
you can only do what you can do.
But it's funny now because we always hold Jeff Lloyd in high regard because when he was campaigning, he was saying straight up what he was not prepared to do. I think maybe sentiments have changed now, and people are now willing to accept that to an extent, depending on who it is.
Or maybe they're not willing to accept it. He's just accepted that he might lose. That's about it.
So the shelf life is 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You got 5 years. Do the best you can for 5 years.
And hope.
Try and make some meaningful changes. Something that you could point to. You could show people this what I did. And I try to keep out of
the fray.
Out of the fray. The reporters called me and I say, I really don't want to make a comment. I will say this. I admire the present government for making the hard decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, let's take the VAT, for example, we talked for two seconds. If having raised the VAT from 7.5% to 12%, if there's not any structural change in the way governments operate and the ease of doing business, as an example, improve, and that they're able to see that the debt is reduced, the national debt is reducing, that the government's not going away on all these large jaunts and so on. If people see that the government is tightening its belt, not just hiring people for the sake of hiring people, not just having another something for the sake of having another something. Once people see that, they themselves will then begin to also tighten their personal belts, and we as a country will begin to grow. And so, my bet is that things are going to be okay. You got to ride out the storm. Well, if you thought people were going to love you every day, you wouldn't have run. So you got to take a little pressure, man. That's all this is.
Well, now we have a whole 20 minutes to discuss my favorite topic. Not my favorite, but it's the topic you discuss, and we can do it in that period of time. Bahamas Air. You're now the chairman of Bahamas Air. It's been the perennial whipping post for many years. And it's because, obviously, government has to subsidize it. Then people have complaints about the scheduling, the type of aircraft, all that, the service, etc. We take a break now, and then we'll do the full 20 minutes with Mr. Tommy Turnquist on Bahamas Air. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we're here in our final segment with Mr. Tommy Turnquist, who is chairman of the Bahamas Air. Now, Bahamas Air, Tommy, has been, like I say, just, boy. First of all, organizationally, financially, how is Bahamas Air performing compared to, say, the previous, 3-4 years?
I think Bahamas Air is making some improvements in terms of its financial performance. Bahamas Air now makes revenues of around this past fiscal year from July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, they'll transport around 825,000 passengers, 850,000 passengers. So, it's not a case where Bahamas Air is not patronized by the traveling public. We go into Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, West Palm Beach, and Houston in the United States. We go into Havana, Cuba. We go into Port-au-Prince and Cape Haitian in Haiti, and we go into Providenciales in Turks. So that's our international routes, and they all run fairly well and fairly much on time, and we have a good operation. We go into then most of the Bahamian Islands. We don't fly into Andros at all. We don't fly into Cat Island at all. And then the southeastern Bahamas, we go in, essentially twice a week.
Why is it not for Andros? It's just not enough passengers?
So
it's
interesting how we got, Bahamas Air got out of Andros. Andros was being well served by what we now call scheduled charter services, the
Western,
the Lears, and then Cat Island is serviced by Sky and Southern Air and so on. So there has to be a conversation, I think, in terms of these schedule their charters and getting those planes up to a standard where all Bahamians are comfortable, particularly in the southeastern Bahamas and so on, in traveling on the smaller planes. We take Bahamas has 8 planes. We have 3 ATR 42s, which are 50 seaters, and 2 ATR 72s, which are 70 seaters. So that's 5 propeller jet planes. And then we have 3 737s, 120 seats. So it's not.
That's a small fleet.
It's a small fleet. It's really a regional airline that we ought to be able to operate fairly efficiently. Except, we've got 628 employees, 585 of which are full time. And Bahamas Air on Tuesday of last week had a long service awards, and we gave awards to 288 people who had served 20 years or more. So Bahamas Air must be a good place to work. So half of your staff complement have been there for more than 20 years. So I mean, it's.
But let me ask you this question. The philosophy of Bahamas Air, it's got to be a kind of a, schizophrenic scenario of whether you're going to be a Bahamian airline that goes to the Bahamas, throughout the Bahamas, and code share with international airlines, or an international airline that goes to some Bahamian. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know, I'm going to use an example like Aloha Airlines, right? I don't think Aloha Airlines does anything except go between the islands of Hawaii.
So Bahamas Air does have a dual role, and one is in terms of national development in terms of the air transportation link between the islands of the Bahamas, and national development in terms of providing a transportation link for tourists, stopover tourists to come to the Bahamas. I mean, and they're both very important. Obviously, more so in terms of getting tourists from the U.S., which is 85% of the market in the Bahamas, and getting them either to Nassau, Freeport, or.
Well, what percentage of Bahamas is 825,000 passengers or visitors?
So in terms of the international numbers, which I don't know how to break down the international from the national, unfortunately, about 60% of our travelers are Bahamian.
Right.
So it's, anyone 40 years or older who's going to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or Orlando, probably yourself excluded, as a first choice, will choose Bahamas Air. I mean, they're seen as safe, they're seen as reliable, they're seen as they can get me there. Now, in terms of some of the legacy U.S. carriers, they may have newer aircraft, they may have a little better on-time performance, but I tell you, if that plane didn't come out of Minneapolis or St. Louis or somewhere else to make that connection out of Miami or Fort Lauderdale they're canceling that flight for the day. Very rarely we can leave anyone stranded in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or Orlando. They know they're coming home tonight. Now, they mightn't come home before midnight, but they're coming home tonight. So, and
you see, he has the blue Bahamas Air jacket on, right?
I can't think this is radio, not TV. And we can bring your bags. We can bring your books. And you're coming on that plane, and you bring in more than the
you come grumpy, but you're coming.
We bringing you home.
That's why we don't just fly there, we live there.
A friend of mine told me he came on that last flight Saturday night. They were about an hour or so late. He said, but I forget when he said, Captain, jump or cap. I forget who he said was, but he said he had that plane open right up. So the plane was full of passengers, full of bags, and they got into Nassau in record time. And you have some of these older captains on Bahamas here. I mean, they could fly a plane. Yeah. So,
so there would be lots of people have made recommendations, i.e., A, you don't need Bahamas Air. That's number one. We could talk about that. B, that Bahamas Air should become more of a regional airline. Otherwise, in other words, they go to, say, an Exuma, they go to Marsh Harbor, and then allow the other, private planes to take it and then spend more time focus on the international routes. And I want to ask you about that, but is there any credibility in that?
I think the political directorate is finding out more and more the usefulness of Bahamas Air. Bahamas Air keeps the first of all, we get 85% of our tourists out of the United States, mostly the eastern seaboard of the United States. Out of that 85%, we probably get 65% coming out of South Florida. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the Bahamas' bread and butter. Mm-hmm. That you wake up on a Thursday and say, man, field's really been getting to me today. I need a break. Let me call Bahamas Air. I go an airline, and I go to Nassau for the weekend. Mm-hmm. That impulse travel out of South Florida is so important that you just shuttle in and back. It's like a jitney in the air.
Right.
And so Bahamas Air is important from that perspective. So you just we gotta refine ways in which we market to that base, I think, and get people over here and work more with the hotels and making sure that they could stay on board. But it is definitely necessary in terms of that link, and definitely necessary in keeping the costs low. I'll give you one other example.
Ask about the cost.
If you're booking a flight from you like to go to Minnesota, from Minnesota to Nassau, come in through Miami on American. So they'll quote you, say, $600-700, and you'll think that that's reasonable. If you just want to go from Nassau to Miami and booking late, because it's only that leg, because they're selling most of it in terms of their hub and spoke connections, they're going to charge you $500-600 just for that one leg. Bahamas Air is not going to charge you over. This is how busy. What we make in July and August now sort of carries us.
That's the shopping.
It's
that's our season.
Summertime. You make it up in November, December as well. But and so $350. But we don't have that peak those big peaks that you'll get on some of those other legacy carriers.
But let me ask you about that, because we're having a problem now. In fact, we're seeing some softening in the market in terms of demand, simply because we believe airline fares are so high. They're astronomical now, because the supply of airlift is weak. Now, this seems to me our vulnerability, airlift, right? They're saying that in the United States right now, 60-something million people are driving to their destinations within a 6-hour range. Yeah. 3 million are flying. It's a huge difference. Now, let me ask you a question. Should Bahamas Air bite the bullet and invest in fleet and go into markets in the United States that we're having problems with getting lift out of, not necessarily competing head-to-head, but some of the smaller markets, the Charlestons and all, to get to people?
The easy answer to your question is yes. The background of that is Bahamas Air is now paid a deposit on a fourth jet. Mm-hmm. We expect to take possession of it with all the Bahamas Air livery and so on by the first week of December. Another 737, but a later version than the 737s we have now. That'll give us an opportunity to do some of those sort of secondary markets that you talk about. But what I also want you to focus on is what I think the tourism industry, yourselves in the hotel industry in particular, don't really look at Bahamas Air as a real partner in terms of bringing tourists to your destination. And but what we're seeing is we're now getting more tourists on our afternoon and evening flights coming out of South America. South America, connecting through Miami.
Okay.
Coming out of South America, coming out of Europe, or Asia, and so, I would invite the hotels to engage more with Bahamas Air. We're beginning to have more arrangements with some of the non-legacy carriers who fly into Miami, Orlando, and Fort Lauderdale, so that Bahamas Air, through a inter-airline agreement or SPA agree, we could seamlessly transport their passengers into the Bahamas.
What could be done to get more? You say 65% of the folks who come here come out of South Florida or Florida. What can be done in those destinations, the West Palm Beaches, the Orlandos, the Fort Lauderdales of Miami, that make travel out of those destinations more competitive than the traditional airlines? Or will that create a price war or something that we don't want to get into?
No, I think, Bahamas Air is not really, we don't, like I say,
up and down.
Our fares are not volatile like some of the legacy carriers. We would love the opportunity to bring more tourists into Nassau. If we're, and it's.
Is it marketing? Is it a marketing
thing? Some of it is marketing. Some of it is also having the availability of the aircraft, and so that would also mean getting some of the local domestic airlines, the Skies, the Westerns, the Lears, the Southern Airs, and so on, Pineapple Air, and so on, to cover those islands so that we could free up
the jets,
the jets, and those ATRs, for example,
those are good planes.
They're excellent planes for tourists to fly. They're that 35, 45, 50 minute flight from South Florida here is perfect for those planes. The problem with the ATRs are in terms of the bags. And when Bahamians, so if you're catering to Bahamians, that's not the plane. If you're catering to tourists, they're ideal planes. And I don't want to get into an argument about whether we should have bought the planes or not. The planes are here. Bahamas Air has a loan for $120 million, 95 of which was for the cost of the five aircraft. So there was another $25 million that went into settling other outstanding debt and lots of closing costs. I mean, I would have loved to have been a consultant or a lawyer when they did that.
They get their share.
The full story that hasn't been told, but I mean, it is what it is. The Bahamas, they kicked the can down the road. We then kicked it down the road this year to next year. But at some point, we're gonna have to come up with $40 million a year to service that debt.
It's crazy.
And
so, I mean, and what is the total turnover for Bahamas Air? Do you know?
Yeah, I do know. It's around $900,000, $800, high 800s.
Million?
No.
1,000?
100,000.
We only make 900.
No, millions.
Sorry,
so 80 million.
Yeah.
We're close to 100 million.
Right. Sorry.
I brought
because I mean, in other words, that 40 million is a big chunk of your turnover.
Yeah. So up to the end of May 2008. So our year end is June. We had made $80 million
That's total revenue.
Yeah, and we expect in June we'd get 8-9 million, close to 10 million. So we'll be just under $90 million. Unfortunately, our expenses to make that $80 million was $90 million.
And on top of that, you owe $40 million a year.
Well, we haven't.
I'm saying you're not being able to pay that.
We've been keeping up. We've been keeping up with the interest payments.
Okay.
But for example, in May the fuel costs increased in May, and so that the incremental cost was higher.
Will you be like we're going to have to run after this, but like BPL, where over a period of time they had to start looking at how they have voluntary separations?
Yeah,
Is that one of the solutions for Bahamas as well?
So we have when I took over as chairman in August of 2017, we had 680 people. We're now down to 628. We are, for example, we hired 12 new cabin attendants, and rather than open it up to new people coming into Bahamas here, we took them from existing areas, positions within the airline, and so we've been doing that.
Because that's your next biggest cost, I imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Salaries are about 43% of revenue.
Wow.
And the industry norm is around 20-25%.
Wow.
43%.
43%. Industry norm is around 25. Well, you know where we went wrong there. All right. Well, listen, Mr. Turnquest, sir. Pleasure having you.
Good to be here, man.
We cleared up a lot of things. As I said, continue to keep the wings, clear and smooth.
Bahamas has excellent staff. I mean, they're very knowledgeable. As I said, more than half have been there more than 20 years, so they know what they're doing. The key is if they see the commitment from the top. You can, a lot of times you want to start from the bottom and work up. You gotta start from the top, and so I try to emphasize from myself as chairman and the board of directors.
That's what you got to do,
and it'll filter down.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks. We got to run.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken Rogan. We'll see you on Thursday.